Hey guys, welcome to day 15 of the Bible in a Year plan. Today, we will be reading Genesis 38 through 40 and Mark 15. If you need to read more about this plan, visit the High Quality Gospel website with the link in the description of the episode and the podcast. Please leave a like and follow the podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Now, let's begin with reading Genesis 38. At that time, Judah left his brothers and settled near an Adullamite named Hirah. There Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua. He took her as a wife and slept with her. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and he named him Er. She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and named him Onan. She gave birth to another son, and named him Shelah. It was at Kezib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Now Er, Judah's firstborn, was evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Sleep with your brother's wife, perform your duty as her brother-in-law, and produce offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he released his semen on the ground, so that he would not produce offspring for his brother. What he did was evil in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. When Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he thought he might die too, like his brothers. So Tamar went to live with her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. Then Judah had finished mourning. He and his friend Hirah, the Adullamite, went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law was going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's clothes, veiled her face, covered herself, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah, for she saw that, though Shelah had grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her and said, "Come, let me sleep with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me for sleeping with me?" "I will send you a young goat from my flock," he replied. But she said, "Only if you leave something with me until you send it." "What should I give you?" he asked. She answered, "Your signet ring, your cord, and the staff in your hand." So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. She got up and left, then removed her veil and put her widow's clothes back on. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite in order to get back the items he had left with the woman, he could not find her. He asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim?" "There has been no cult prostitute here," they answered. So the Adullamite returned to Judah, saying, "I couldn't find her, and besides, the men of the place said, 'There has been no cult prostitute here.'" Judah replied, "Let her keep the items for herself, otherwise we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send this young goat, but you couldn't find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has been acting like a prostitute, and now she is pregnant." "Bring her out," Judah said, "and let her be burned to death." As she was being brought out, she sent her father-in-law this message, "I am pregnant by the man to whom these items belong." And she added, "Examine them. Whose signet ring, cord, and staff are these?" Judah recognized them and said, "She is more in the right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her intimately again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife took it and tied a scarlet thread around it, announcing, "This one came out first." But then he pulled his hand back. Out came his brother, and she said, "What a breakout you have made for yourself." So he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread tied to his hand, came out and was named Zerah. Now Joseph had been taken to Egypt. An Egyptian named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guards, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, serving in the household of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made everything he did successful, Joseph found favor with his master and became a personal attendant. Potiphar also put him in charge of his household and placed all that he owned under his authority. From the time that he was put in charge of his household, of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. The Lord's blessing was on all that he owned, in his house and in his fields. He left all that he owned under Joseph's authority. He did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. After some time his master's wife looked longingly at him and said, "Sleep with me." But he refused. "Look," he said to his master's wife, "with me here my master does not concern himself with anything in this house, and he has put all that he owns under my authority. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do this immense evil? And how could I sin against God?" Although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her. Now one day he went into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were there. She grabbed him by his garment and said, "Sleep with me." But leaving his garment in her hand, he escaped and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his garment with her and had run outside, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "my husband brought a Hebrew man to make fools of us. He came to me so he could sleep with me, and I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard my screaming for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside." She put Joseph's garment beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave you brought to us came to make a fool of me, but when I screamed for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside." When his master heard the story, his wife told him, "These are the things your slave did to me." He was furious and had them thrown into prison, where the king's prisoners were confined. So Joseph was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. He granted him favor with the prison warden. The warden put all the prisoners who were in the prison under Joseph's authority, and he was responsible for everything that was done there. The warden did not bother him anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made everything that he did successful. After this, the king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guards, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guards assigned Joseph to them as their personal attendant, and they were in custody for some time. The king of Egypt's cupbearer and baker, who were confined in the prison, each had a dream. Both had a dream on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they looked distraught. So he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We had dreams," they said to him, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told him his dream to Joseph. "In my dream, there was a vine in front of me. On the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." "This is its interpretation," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You'll put Pharaoh's cup in your hand, the way you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well for you, remember that I was with you. Please show kindness to me by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should put me in the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was positive, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. 3 baskets of white bread were on my head. In the top basket were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is my interpretation," Joseph replied. "The 3 baskets were 3 days. In just 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and hang you on a tree. Then the birds will eat the flesh from your body." On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he gave a feast for all his servants. He elevated the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among his servants. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position as cupbearer, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had explained to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now we read Mark 15. As soon as it was morning, having held a meeting with the elders, scribes, and the whole Sanhedrin, the chief priest tied Jesus up, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." And the chief priest accused him of many things. Pilate questioned him again, "Aren't you going to answer? Look how many things they are accusing you of." But Jesus still not answer. So Pilate was amazed. At the festival, Pilate used to release for the people a prisoner whom they requested. There was one named Barabbas, who was in prison with rebels who had committed murder during the rebellion. The crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do for them as was his custom. Pilate answered them, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews for you?" For he knew it was because of envy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd so that he would release Barabbas to them instead. Pilate asked them again, "Then what do you want me to do with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Again they shouted, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What has he done wrong?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them, and after having Jesus flogged, he handed them over to be crucified. The soldiers led him away to the palace, that is the governor's residence, and called the whole company together. They dressed him in a purple robe, twisted together a crown of thorns, and put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They were hitting him on the head with a stick and spitting on him. Getting down on their knees, they were paying him homage. After they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple robe and put his clothes on him. They led him out to crucify him. They forced a man coming in from the country who was passing by to carry Jesus' cross. He was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. Then they crucified him and divided his clothes, casting lots for them to decide what each would get. Now it was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge written against him was, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 criminals with him. One was his right and one on his left. Those who passed by were yelling insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha, the one who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself by coming down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests with the scribes were mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross, so that we may see and believe." Even those who were crucified with him taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, and at 3 Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which is translated, my God, why have you abandoned me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "See, he's calling for Elijah." Some ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, fixed it on a stick, offered him a drink, and said, "Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." Jesus let out a loud cry and breathed his last. Then the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. When the centurion, who was standing opposite to him, saw the way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was the Son of God." There were also women watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph, and Salome. In Galilee these women followed him and took care of him. Many other women had come up with him to Jerusalem. When it was already evening, because it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the Sanhedrin, who was himself looking forward to the kingdom of God, came and boldly went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had already died. When he found out from the centurion, he gave the corpse to Joseph. After he brought some linen cloth, Joseph took him down and wrapped him in the linen. Then he laid him in the tomb, cut out of the rock, and rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph were watching where he was laid. On day 14, we saw Jacob become Israel, and Joseph taken and sold into slavery by his brother, who do not wish to be ruled by him. In Mark, Jesus was betrayed and accused by Judas and the Sanhedrin, and we saw how God protects those who desire safety in him, not the wicked. Today we see Judah have sons who were either evil or disobeyed God. Judah continues familial issues and has children with his daughter-in-law. Joseph was bought by Potiphar, a high-ranking official. Through this, Joseph also grew to power, became influential, and successful. Through his slavery, he was able to build authority. God allowed Joseph to take advantage of this situation, though it looked terrible, and made it give Joseph a position to glorify God through his works and employment. Then Joseph was accused by Potiphar's wife, and Joseph was arrested. Now Joseph built an authority in Potiphar's house, and all the training by his father came to use. Now Joseph continues to use his training to help the warden of the prison and have authority in the prison. Through his authority and kindness, he hopes to gain favor of Pharaoh. God can use us through our talents. In fact, our talents that we believe we have are not just coincidences, but should be used to glorify God. We have physical gifts, and it's most likely that we will need to use them to do what God commands us. Joseph was an apprentice of his father, a businessman and owner of livestock and farmland. Joseph knew business and knew how to command and organize, so God used him in places where his talents would be useful. Now, should we expect everything to go our way? No. God will put us in places where it seems we have no use or no hope, but that is not true. Our places in life, whether physical or metaphorical, are useful to God and can be used, whether good or bad. But it is up to us to listen to God and do what he says. We must follow him. In Mark, Jesus stands before Pilate, the Roman ruler of Judea. His job is to look for Roman crimes, for the Jews would not kill a man during Passover, and they have no true reason. The Sanhedrin is going to Pilate with this argument. He is claiming to be king of the Jews, since the Messiah is supposed to be that. Claiming yourself king is treason and punishable by death. Pilate just sees him as a teacher and not a rebel, but his job is to keep the Jews in line and not rebel. So at Passover, Pilate released a prisoner that the people choose to release. But during this time, he had a murderer and a rebel and Jesus. The crowd quickly turned against Jesus, a direct contrast to how he entered Jerusalem. The people are turned against him, as prophesied by the Old Testament and Jesus himself, and is sent to be crucified, a criminal's death. As he carries his own cross, which is what he commands us to do, and gets hung with two criminals. This description is detailed because, number 1, to prove it happened, and 2, to show that he has died and suffered for us. Jesus dies faster than usual, and as proof, they stabbed him in the side, which Mark doesn't explain. But what is interesting is that Joseph, a Sanhedrin member, believed in Christ and offered his very nice tomb, showing that Jesus definitely gained a following among religious leaders, not even to mention Nicodemus. This was an intense time for everyone. His followers left, with only John watching Jesus die and a few of the women. Everything happened so quickly, and it seems for no reason. But Jesus did predict this, and the disciples couldn't figure it out. I wonder what they thought. Did they remember what he taught? Did they forget? Was it like a light bulb went off in their head? But now it's over, and some of Jerusalem are looking for them. They're scattered, and the Sabbath is coming. Not only this, but Jesus died, like a sacrifice should. He completed his task that was laid out in prophecy. But one thing still remains: his resurrection. Thank you for joining in the reading and understanding of these chapters, and let us all be vigilant in continuing this reading. Please share, like, follow, or whatever you can do to help us reach more people with the Bible reading. Please also check out the High Quality Gospel website for more information and a couple of store items. Thank you, and keep learning.